let's cross to Washington, D.C., where Sky News Washington correspondent Annelise Nielsen joins us. Annelise Nielsen, we saw a defiant Donald Trump hours ago coming out of the courthouse, and we also saw prosecutor Alvin Bragg make these comments about what the jury decided. Have a look.
The 12 everyday jurors vowed to make a decision based on the evidence and the law, and the evidence and the law alone. Their deliberations led them to a unanimous conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant, Donald J. Trump, is guilty of 34 counts of falsifying business records in the first degree to conceal a scheme to corrupt the 2016 election. And while this defendant may be unlike any other in American history, we arrived at this trial and ultimately today at this verdict in the same manner as every other case that comes through the courtroom doors, by following the facts and the law and doing so without fear or favor.
So Annelise Nielsen, the prosecutor there, just said that they brought this case essentially without fear or favor. But in America right now, are people really believing that this case on esoteric bookkeeping charges would have been brought had the defendant's name not been Donald J. Trump, candidate for president?
Well, don't forget as well, before this, his predecessor wouldn't bring this case, and they had to pick up a bit of novel law that hasn't been used before. So it's a bit of a interpretation there to say that they just followed the law. No, they really worked at getting this done, which is their right as a prosecutor. Sure, these are laws that are on the books, but they had to try something new to get this done. And so I think a lot of people across America, and the polls are reflecting this, aren't convinced that they have changed their mind because of this. So what we're seeing is people who were voting Republican anyway are now more supportive of Donald Trump. People who were voting Democrat anyway hate him even more than they did before. And so really there's just this small fraction of independent voters, and there's still not a clear-cut decision of how this is going to impact them down the road. And I think too, we're talking about just being 5 months out away from the election, but that's a long time for the rest of the world who doesn't follow politics day to day, who have very cemented ideas about both of the leaders. Whether they like them or not is one thing, but people have their opinions of them is the real point to be looked at here.
Yeah, and Annelise, what's been the reaction just in the immediate minutes and hours after that verdict came down? Cheers, jeers. It must have been very emotional both for people on the left and the right.
Well, what's interesting is we haven't seen much of a scene outside of court. There was a big increase in security, and from the reports that we're getting from outside of the court, it doesn't seem like there was any big show. What we're not seeing is anyone really coming out and doing the victory lap yet, although I'm sure that will come. But what we have seen is senior Republicans backing Donald Trump in. We've seen Speaker Mike Johnson immediately put out a statement criticizing this entire case and calling it an abuse of power. We've seen Tim Scott, the Republican senator from South Carolina, who's widely touted as being one of the top picks for his vice president, putting a very fierce statement out criticizing this. Donald Trump's not going anywhere for the Republicans. This case doesn't mean he's going anywhere for this upcoming election. And when we're talking about the theoretical prospect of him being in a jail cell, it would take an extraordinary read of the sentencing guidelines to put him in a jail cell. I think that would have a real chance of just inflaming the supporters of Donald Trump even more than they already are.
Annelise Nielsen, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time and bringing us this breaking news out of New York City. Thanks for your time, Annelise Nielsen.